in ministry, especially Matt's response to this.
Did one of you ask that question?
No, we would not set you up like that.
Okay, where do I start? Because this will be something that will grill a lot of people. Yeah, I don't have any problems.
Let's bring out the barbecue, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. I don't have any problems with women in ministry. Mostly because practically, if you exclude women in ministry, it cuts out 50% of the people that can work for the kingdom. So even from a practical level, I don't think it's very smart. I know why people don't like women in ministry. And
hold on. Can I clarify something?
Sure.
Nobody has problems with women in ministry. That's a
leadership.
We all agree that women should be in ministry.
All right. So what's the question?
Leadership and preaching.
So that's what specifically they're talking about?
No, that wasn't specifically what I talked about. It was exactly how I read it.
But that's what they meant.
That's
okay. Yeah. So they're not talking about ministry.
They're not.
Okay.
Because we all agree that women should be in ministry.
Okay. All right.
And the Bible talks about women deacons.
All kinds of women doing ministry.
Are you allowed to admit that? That there are women deacons?
That says in the Bible.
It does say it, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we're talking about women in leadership and preaching.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be what the listener, we're going to assume that's what they meant.
If we assume
okay.
wrong.
So
we assume everything.
So the question must be then, how do I get around the scripture references? Okay, all right. So the scripture references that would address a woman in leadership over a man, I think they're in 1 Timothy, and there might even be one in 1 Corinthians, largely. Those are the ones that people camp out on. Paul says, I will not allow a woman to teach or preach or have authority over a man. So there's two ways to look at it on my side. It's Paul was talking directly about the church at Ephesus, I believe. I mean, my memory, I think it was Ephesus. And he was putting Timothy in charge. Go ahead.
Would you like to circle back to this when you've had more time to think about it, or you can answer it right now?
I can do my best.
Okay.
I don't mind circling back.
We'll get some questions in, clarification questions.
Yeah.
And then we'll...
Only because to be fair to you, if you have to start quoting scripture from all the text, and
I don't think I'm that far off so far.
Okay.
So
no.
So I think Paul was addressing specifically the church in Ephesus because in 1 Timothy, he talks about how widows were wealthier and there were some younger widows that were just gossiping and causing trouble. In fact, I think he even says that they're just stirring up strife. So I think when he when he says to Timothy, who's a very young leader, like Timothy's probably somewhere around 20, and Paul says, I don't allow a woman to teach. I think his opinion was for Timothy to take it on himself to say, or have authority over a man, because it just gets rid of the problem right away. You've got all these gossiping women in the place where you are right now. Take on my model of leadership and just fix the problem. However, he seems to, in other places, like you just suggested, give women, deaconhood, which is a pretty big deal in the church, where they would have authority, or at least some authority. And he tends to favor Chloe and even credits Chloe as having the church at her home, which means she's the one who has authority to have people there. So you could argue that Paul is talking about isolated cases. I don't personally think he is. I would take it like this. Paul is a Pharisee. When he was converted, Paul had huge issues that he had to deal with, just like we do. So look at the way Paul talks about marriage. He's relatively clueless with regards to what he says about why marriage is necessary.
Same as us.
Yeah, that's right. Well, probably same. Well, like, for example, Paul says, if you're burning with lust, essentially, just get married.
That's what I say.
Right? What? Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
That's fine. The point is...
You don't agree with that?
I don't think that's the right reason to get married. No,
Shoot.
I don't.
Shoot.
I think there's far more besides. I also think... Anyway, I also think that you have to consider that God has different rules than Paul. Now what? So God certainly put women in leadership over men. Jesus gave the gospel and the direction of evangelism to women. Right? The message of the risen Christ was given to women first in a society where men were often the ones that were put on the pedestals. God put Deborah in charge of Israel. She was a prophetess, and she also had authority to judge the entire nation. So you have in Scripture places where God is the justification for the standard that I hold.
Okay.
So
question for you. So then in the specific text I'm thinking of where
and there's lots more, by the way. I could.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
And I think we could circle back to it another time. There's probably be a longer discussion than we can have right now. I guess I always felt like the text where it specifically talks about church leadership. Would you not agree that those are specifically to men, or you're just thinking it's leaving the women out, like often Scripture does, where it says, do this, brothers do this, and
so the Bible's often written that way. Like, for example, when Paul addresses, I think almost every church other than the church at Philippi, he addresses them with the male vernacular, brethren. But he's talking to everyone.
I guess back on those cases though in Timothy and where he's speaking about being an elder, I mean, it says a man of one wife. Like, do you think
that's true? That's true.
You would agree that that's pretty specific.
He's
right?
specifically talking there, but again, I think he's going with what he favors, right? So, I think this is one of those places where it isn't a central pillar, so you have to be consistent across the board. So when Paul starts talking about how women will be saved through childbirth because they weren't the ones that were they were the ones that were deceived and Adam wasn't. You have to look at that consistency and what is he talking about there?
He's not saying that if you don't have kids, you won't be saved.
Well, I don't think so, but you can draw from it. Like, all I'm saying is you have to be consistent across Scripture. How is it that God and Jesus certainly endorses, supports, and puts women on that pedestal, but Paul, a converted Pharisee, has problems with it?
Okay.
So you have to be honest with Scripture. You just have to be.
I think a lot of people's brains popped.
No, they didn't.
Oh,
I think that
one guy that left a comment last week, his brains were popped. But
no, I think that we could most Christians could do a better job realizing, especially in our culture, where Kyle and I come from, that God expects all people to minister. He expects all of us to be disciples. Yep. And I think I think that would be in a relationship with you where I can be challenged, even though we're going to disagree on this. We will definitely disagree. I'll disagree with you. I think that we can always be challenged by people that do disagree with us. So we can wrestle with things and realize that, hey, we all have areas where we could grow in this area.
I will say this.
Okay.
Two things I want to say. Okay. First thing is, this is the least of my worries. Like, for example, I get along, and so does my wife Fiona, get along extremely well, usually with the churches.
With the Dutch Reformed people?
Yeah, but also with the churches that take a more hardline, conservative approach in interpreting Scripture. So often we are very close with the churches that don't like to have women preachers. But the Salvation Army seems to be a bit of a neutral ground. We do. We tend to have great relationships with churches that don't like women in leadership. Because it's the least of my worries. If somebody interprets the Scripture with that kind of hardline, literal lens, I don't care. My bigger concern are the guys that would say, Scripture is no bedrock whatsoever. We can all just interpret whatever we want. But, the Bible isn't a bedrock, right? So a bedrock. Yeah. So the authority is whatever you feel, and those are the ones that are
scary.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So your camp, I don't have much of a problem with, because it's not a first tier, or in my opinion, even a second tier issue. That's the first thing I want to say.
Except for we would, growing up, they would be like, that's a first tier
okay.
issue. Like, it's
no,
hard.
Hang on. Well, it's not. It's not. According to the gospel, it's not.
Well,
right?
I know that.
Okay.
But
the second thing I want to say is, what do you have a problem with, for this person who's asking the question, with a woman preaching? Is it inside the box called the church building that you don't want to have a woman preaching? Or is it on a soapbox outside? because Jesus saved the woman at the well who was a Samaritan, and she became the very first evangelist that went and told people that he was the Messiah. So, was her preaching wrong? Because that's what she did. So do you mean like inside the church building, a woman shouldn't be preaching? Or do you mean flat out a woman shouldn't be preaching? Because I don't think that's defensible in Scripture at all.
No, and so I look at it like I think I added a bit.
So answer me first. Where?
It'd be in the building is where the people would land
Right.
on. So I think where...
Which is silly.
Because how I grew up, there'd be like they would have like a women's event, whatever, and they would invite like only women there, but they would invite the elder to open with prayer.
Okay,
And
but the
it would
camp
be-
is huge,
be-
so I don't
because
like pigeon.
No one else would be allowed.
I don't. There again, it's such a
I mean,
broad
they're
spectrum
fair,
of where people
fair.
land. I think you want to be so careful putting people in a camp there. I think the real heart of it is
That's real though.
he's just short circuiting one more time.
No, I just think it's funny that. Anyway, go ahead.
No, what do you think's funny?
I think it's funny that you are trying to say we can't be putting people in camp, but I think you're in a camp.
Touche.
Okay.
Touche.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
But the
That was awesome.
which camp are you going to be on?
Anyway, keep going.
Feels
Keep
like
going.
prison.
Don't put Gary in a box.
listen,
is what he's saying.
When we get to the kingdom of heaven, we sit at the throne of grace.
We're going to get an education for sure.
Like
all of
I could
us.
be
All
wrong
of
about
us.
this,
All
right?
of us.
And the
All of
Lord
us.
could say, Fiona, I never wanted you preaching.
Yeah.
But thanks. Right? Right. I highly doubt it. Anyway, what were you going to say? We can't end like that. Let's round this out.
Okay, round it.
I was
Gary.
going to round it out. The main thing is for people to be wrestling on what they are called to be doing. And I have spent time in obviously all kinds of churches, from the church where there's not a woman speaking anywhere about anything, which I don't believe is what God's called us to. I don't believe he's called women to. And I feel like in places often where women are extremely strong, I feel like men often abdicate leadership in 100 ways. Men don't lead well spiritually. I've had hundreds of women in my life, cry because their husband's not leading.
Yes.
They want their husband to lead. And it's uncomfortable. If you've never been brought up in a household where you've been taught to do that, like I feel like I am relatively mature in that area, and I still fall short often at home with my wife, where it's like, hey, I'm not praying for enough. I'm not having those awkward conversations, whatever they are, right?
Yeah.
So when we start when you are a person that's ripping someone theologically, when practically you're not living anything out how the Bible's called you to, shame on you. So that's kind of where I would land. And I know you and your wife have a heart for the Lord and desperately want the lost to be saved. So for me, there's just, there again, I don't agree. I would say that we would interpret differently, and we can be friends. And I think there's great wisdom and great spiritual benefit to have a few friends in your camp that don't agree on every single issue. But when we were brought up, you hung out with only people that agreed on every single issue. And that's why there's 1,000 church splits, because human nature would have it that pretty soon you disagree whether there should be chairs or pews in church.
I just want to point out to our listeners, you said you disagree with me, but you told me that the reason was because of a building. So that's where women aren't allowed to preach, is inside a building.
I said that's where the camp would land. I don't.
Right, okay.
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
Don't.
Fair enough. All right. Good enough.
Either way, I think that rounds it out. Good. I love what Gary said. I appreciate everyone listening. I hope you guys have an awesome Merry Christmas. We'll catch you
Or a
next
happy
week.
And if you don't like
or a
women
happy
preachers, don't listen to them. But go figure out what the gospel is.
Yes.
It's that simple. It's a non-issue for me.
This Chilliwack, there's only a handful. It's pretty
If
easy to
you
avoid.
can't listen to
Pretty
a
easy to
woman
avoid.
preaching, then go to a man who's going to show you the gospel. Just get to the gospel. That's what's important.
See you guys
love
New Year's
it.
Eve. Appreciate it.
We should sing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas."
Okay.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish Gary Merry
where are you
Christmas.
going?
We wish you a Merry
Yes,
Christmas
take a picture.
and a happy.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that episode and were blessed by it, would you be willing to support the show? That would help a lot in creating more content, improving the quality of the content, putting the production value, getting more guests on, and me being able to spend more time and energy towards it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click up here and it'll take you to a support page. But you can also subscribe to the podcast by clicking over here and doing that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.